Some of the most powerful decisions controlling your life were never made by you. You did not choose the first voice that made failure feel shameful. You did not choose the environment that taught you risk was dangerous. You did not choose the childhood experience that made approval feel like safety. You did not consciously select every fear, habit, insecurity, distraction, or definition of success operating inside you. But if you never examine those forces, you may spend your entire adult life obeying decisions you never made. That is one of the hidden causes of unrealized potential. Not always a lack of intelligence, not always laziness, not always a lack of ambition. Sometimes you are trying to build a new life with an identity designed to preserve the old one. And until you become conscious of that conflict, part of you will keep moving forward while another part quietly pulls you back. Personal evolution is not merely becoming more productive, it is the process of reclaiming authorship over your own life. The brain is not your enemy. You have probably heard some version of this claim that people will say the brain is your enemy. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, not help you succeed. There is some truth buried inside that statement, but it is also too simple. The brain is not one frightened machine with a single switch labeled survival. Human behavior emerges from interacting systems involving threat, detection, learning, reward, memory, emotion, attention, physiology, social experience, and the environment. There is a theory in exercise science called the central governor model. It proposes that the brain regulates exertion partly to protect the body from catastrophic failure. But the model remains debated and it should not be stretched into a universal explanation for every form of human underperformance. The useful principle is not that your brain wants you to fail, it is that human beings often conserve effort, and they repeat what has become familiar, and they respond to threats, and they avoid uncertain costs. We talked about this many times on this channel. Familiarity reduces the number of decisions you must make. Habits reduce cognitive labor. Social acceptance reduces conflict. Avoidance reduces discomfort in the immediate moment. Those responses can protect you, but what protects you today can also imprison you tomorrow. The habits that once helped you survive embarrassment may now prevent you from being seen. The caution that once helped you survive embarrassment may now prevent you from being seen. The caution that once kept you from being rejected may now prevent you from creating. The identity that once helped you belong may not be too small for the life you are trying to build. That does not mean all discomfort is valuable. Pain is not automatically progress. Chaos is not courage. Exhaustion is not excellence. The objective is not to become comfortable with every form of suffering. The objective is to become capable of tolerating the specific discomfort required by your chosen mission. There is a difference between needless suffering and adaptive challenge. One destroys capacity, the other expands it. Thought is the blueprint, behavior is the construction. Most people attempt change in the wrong order. They wait till they feel disciplined before acting with discipline. They wait to feel confident before behaving confidently. They wait to feel motivated before beginning the work. They wait for an internal emotional ceremony that grants them permission and to become different. But transformation rarely announces itself that politely. You can think for years about becoming a writer. The page remains empty. You can watch hundreds of videos about business and the offer remains unsold. You can study confidence while continuing to avoid every situation in which confidence would have to be practiced. Thinking can produce direction, yes, but behavior produces evidence. And evidence is what begins changing your interpretation of yourself. Thought is the blueprint. Behavior is the construction. This does not mean thoughts and emotions are irrelevant. Cognitive and behavioral approaches often work together precisely because thought, emotion, behavior, and environment influences one another. But when you are trapped inside endless self-analysis, action introduces new information. The disciplined act can occur before the disciplined feeling. The courageous act can occur while fear is still present. The work can begin before motivation reports for duty. Habits develop through repeated behavior associated with recurring cues and contexts. As those associations strengthen, the behavior can become increasingly automatic. So stop demanding that your new identity arrive fully formed. Give it a body, give it a behavior, give it a place on the calendar. You do not need to feel like a writer today. Write one page. You do not need to feel like an entrepreneur today. Make an offer. Make one offer. You do not need to feel transformed. Perform the next action that the transformed version of you would perform. Then repeat it before the old identity has enough time to negotiate. Environment is invisible instruction. Willpower is a temporary vote for this. Your environment counts ballots all day long. You may say you want to read more, but your phone is beside your bed. Your notifications are active and the book is in another room. You may say you want to eat differently, but the food you are trying to avoid is available, and easier to prepare than the food you claim to prefer. You may say you want to build something ambitious, but you spend your time surrounded by people who interpret ambition as arrogance, risk as foolishness, and failure as proof that you should never have tried. Then you blame yourself for lacking discipline, but your environment is not neutral. It is giving you instructions. Not always through words, through availability, through friction, through repetition, through also expectations, through what gets rewarded, through what gets mocked, through what is always within reach. Habit research consistently shows that context matters because repeated cues can begin triggering behavior with less conscious deliberation. Stable context also help intended behaviors become more automatic. This is why digging your environment is not weakness, it is intelligence. Move the phone, prepare the workspace, remove the temptation, place the book where your hand already goes. Schedule the work before the day begins making decisions for you. Spend less time asking whether you possess enough willpower. Ask whether your surroundings are making the right behavior easier or harder. And your environment is not only physical, it is informational. Every person you follow is furnishing part of your mental environment. Every repeated message teaches you what to notice. Every group establishes boundaries around what feels normal. Every algorithm is competing to become part of your inner dialogue. So I want you to choose carefully. What repeatedly enters your attention eventually participates in your perception. And perception influences the opportunities you can recognize. So do not use the craft to repair the ego. There are at least two very different ways to pursue excellence. You can pursue the craft because you value the work itself, or you can use the craft as a vehicle for repairing how you feel about yourself. One person wants to become an exceptional physician because the human body fascinates them and healing matters to them. And another wants a title because it promises status, money, admiration, or proof that everyone who doubted them was wrong. Most people contain some mixture of both. You know, to be honest with you, when I was just reading that, I was like kind of thinking about myself, like that's me. When I'm writing, like it's truth to myself. I write with truth. Money is not automatically corrupting. Recognition is not automatically shallow. Competition is not automatically ego. External incentives and intrinsic motivation can coexist, yes. Research suggests that intrinsic motivation is especially important for the quality of performance, while incentives may contribute more strongly to the quantity of performance. The danger begins when the reward replaces the reason. When the audience becomes more important than the art. When the title becomes more important than the competence. When appearing successful becomes more important than becoming useful. When the craft becomes a courtroom in which you are permanently trying to win a case against your own past. That form of ambition can produce enormous output. It can also produce a life you are incapable of enjoying. Mastery has a different texture. Mastery is interested in detail. Mastery can tolerate obscurity, Mastery wants correction because correction improves the work. Mastery does not require every practice session to feel profound. It can love the mundanity. Mundanity. That is one reason. That is one reason flow is so compelling. Flow is commonly described as deep absorption in activity, reduced self-consciousness, altered experience of time, and intense concentration. It is more likely when the challenge of the task is reasonably matched to the person's skill. But flow is not a supernatural state available only to elite performers. You can experience it while writing, building, studying, training, cooking, designing, solving. The crucial shift is that your attention moves away from watching yourself perform and into the performance itself. You stop asking, how do I look? Am I impressive? Are people noticing? What will this prove? And you return to the work. That is the psychological freedom. Confidence is stored evidence. Confidence is misunderstood as a personality. Some people appear naturally loud, socially fearless, or certain of themselves, but volume is not competence. Arrogance is not competence. And feeling good about yourself does not guarantee that you could perform a specific task. Mastery can tolerate obscurity. Mastery wants correction because correction improves the work. Mastery does not require every practice session to feel profound. It can love the mundanity. That is one reason flow is so compelling. Flow is commonly described as deep absorption in activity, reduced self-consciousness, altered experience of time, and intense concentration. It is more likely when the challenge of the task is reasonably matched to the person's skill. But flow is not a supernatural state that available only to elite performers. You can experience it while writing, building, studying, training, cooking, designing, solving. The crucial shift is that your attention moves away from watching yourself perform and into the performance itself. You stop asking, how do I look? Am I impressive? Are people noticing? What will this improve? And you return to the work. That is psychological freedom. Confidence is stored evidence. We talked about confidence plenty of times on this channel, and we're going to keep talking about it because it's very important. Confidence is often misunderstood as a personality. Some people appear naturally loud, socially fearless, or certain of themselves, but volume is not competence. Arrogance is not confidence. And feeling good about yourself does not guarantee that you can perform a specific task. A more useful concept is not self-efficacy, your belief that you can execute the behaviors required to produce a particular result. Self-efficacy is not a general declaration that you are wonderful. It is specific. I believe I can deliver this presentation. I believe I can solve this problem. I believe I can survive this conversation. I believe I can perform under these conditions. Albert Bandura's framework identifies 4 major contributors to self-efficacy. Your own mastery experiences, watching relevant people succeed, credible encouragement and feedback, and your interpretation of your physical and emotional state. Notice what this means. Confidence is not simply something you possess. It is something. It is partly constructed from evidence and interpretation. 2 people can experience the same racing heart before performing. One interpreted as I am panicking. The other interpreted as my body is preparing me. See, there was one time where somebody would ask me sometimes, they'd be like, "Oh, are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, I'm excited." The feeling can feel the same, but the interpretation can be completely different. My body is preparing me. The physical activation may be similar. The assigned meaning changes the response. Your interpretation of past failures matters too. The human mind often gives negative information greater weight than positive information. Failure, criticism, and threat can therefore occupy more psychological territory than the equivalent success or compliments. That means your memory may not be an impartial accountant. It may carefully archive every embarrassment while misplacing evidence of progress. You remember the video that failed. You forget that you published when most people remained afraid. You remember the person who rejected you. You forget the people who trusted you. You remember the test you failed. You forget the material you now understand because that failure forced you to study differently. Protecting confidence does not mean lying to yourself. It means refusing to let your failures monopolize the evidence. Confidence should be truthful, not inflated, not humiliated, accurate. The small win protocol. When people enter a slump, they often attempt a cinematic recovery. They want one enormous victory to erase the entire losing period. One trade that recovers every dollar. One workout that repairs 6 inactive months. One viral video that rescues the whole entire YouTube channel. One perfect week that absolves years of inconsistency. But desperation distorts judgment. Anxiety can weaken goal-directed attentional control and increase attention toward threatening information. The more frightened you become, the more danger you may perceive, and the harder rational action can become. That is why first objective during a slump is not always to recover everything. It is to restore functional behavior, reduce the distance between where you are and the next executable win. Not the final destination, the next marker, the next page, the next workout, the next call, the next dollar earned honestly, the next promise kept. This is not permission to become permanently mediocre. You are not lowering the ultimate standard. You are lowering the cost of re-entry. The objective is to create a victory small enough to become achievable, but meaningful enough to become evidence. Then stack it. One win changes the emotional climate. The next win strengthens the pattern. Repeated success gives your mind evidence that effective action is possible again. Momentum is confidence in motion. You come back, your comeback does not need to begin impressively. It needs to begin repeatedly. Approval can become a ceiling. Caring what other people think is not automatically weakness. Human beings are social creatures. Belonging carries psychological and practical value. Social exclusion is genuinely painful, and research suggests that some of the neural systems involved in social pain overlap with systems involved in physical pain. But a natural concern for belonging can expand into a prison. You begin rejecting yourself to prevent other people from rejecting you. You soften every conviction, hide every ambition, delay every public attempt. You ask the imagined audience for permission before the audience has even arrived. Eventually, you become so skilled at avoiding embarrassment that you also avoid significance. The answer is not to stop caring about every opinion. That will be foolish. The judgment of a qualified mentor matters. The honest response of a customer matters. The concerns of people affected by your decisions matter. Truth matters even when it arrives through criticism. The real skill is selecting whose judgment deserves authority. That's the point. That's the discernment. I want you to ask, is this person informed? Are they honest? Do they understand the mission? Do they bear any cost if I follow their advice? Have they built something I respect? Are they correcting the work or merely punishing the attempt? The goal is not indifference. It is discernment. When everyone's opinion carries equal weight, strangers become members of your board of directors. First, I want you to fire most of them. The child who may still be making adult decisions, many adult patterns, have roots in early experiences. That does not mean every ambition is trauma. It does not mean your parents caused every problem. It does not mean childhood permanently determines destiny. And it does not mean every difficult memory requires a dramatic diagnosis. But early environments can influence the expectations, schemas, coping strategies, and interpretations people carry forward. Adverse childhood experiences are associated with elevated risks across several adult health and psychological outcomes, although outcomes vary considerably and resilience remains possible. A child may learn attention must be earned through achievement. Conflict means abandonment. Love disappears when performance falls. Money is the only protection against humiliation. Being visible is dangerous. Needing help is weakness. Then the child becomes an adult, but the instruction survives. The adult calls it ambition, standards, independence, drive, preference, personality. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is an old adaptation wearing expensive clothing. This is where radical honesty becomes necessary. What are you still trying to prove? To whom? What victory do you believe will finally make an old humiliation disappear? What are you afraid would be true about you if you stop achieving? Would you still want this mission if nobody applauded? Is your ambition building your future or prosecuting your past? You cannot change what happened, but you can stop asking your future to serve a sentence imposed by your past. Your history may explain the pattern. It does not deserve permanent execution authority. Once a week, take 10 minutes without your phone, music, or outside input. Ask yourself 5 questions. First, I want you to ask, what have I repeatedly thought or felt this week that I did not consciously choose? Not every thought represents your judgment. Some are habits, some are fears, some are echoes. Okay, so think about that. Second, I want you to write what environment, person, cue, or situation repeatedly activated that pattern. Do not analyze the thought in isolation. Locate the conditions surrounding it. Third, I want you to write, what is this pattern trying to protect me from? Rejection, embarrassment, uncertainty, responsibility, failure, success. Fourth, I want you to write, what is one behavior that would contradict the old instruction? Not an intention, not an affirmation, a visible behavior. Send the proposal, publish the video, remove the app, study for 20 minutes. Tell the truth. Make the call. Leave the room. Stay in the room. Fifth, I want you to write, what evidence will I record during the next 7 days? Keep an evidence ledger. Record promises kept, pages written, workouts completed, offers made, difficult conversations that you have survived, mistakes that were corrected. Do not wait for your memory to tell you the story fairly. Document the truth. Sovereignty begins where autopilot ends. You cannot choose every force that shaped you. You cannot choose where you began. You cannot prevent every fear from appearing. You cannot erase every failure, criticism, or inherited belief, but you can decide what receives authority now. Potential is not always a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. Sometimes it is existing capacity trapped beneath habit, fear, environmental pressure, false interpretation, and borrowed identity. You do not realize it through motivational excitement alone. No, you release it by removing its mechanisms of suppression. Change one behavior, alter one cue, record one victory. Choose one discomfort that serves the mission. Tell yourself one truth your old identity would prefer to avoid. Then do it again. Do not wait to feel like a new person. No, please don't. Put the new person into motion, because every repeated action leaves evidence. Evidence becomes belief. Belief changes perception. Perception changes what you attempt, and what you repeatedly attempt eventually changes the architecture of your life. You may not have chosen every instruction placed inside you, but you are responsible for deciding which instructions continue running. That is personal evolution. That is psychological sovereignty. And sovereignty begins where autopilot ends. So do not merely ask, who am I? Ask, what within me was consciously chosen, and what within me is still choosing for me. Choose one behavior that has been holding you back. Not 10, 1. That's what I want you to do. 1. Change it for the next 7 days. Then return with evidence. And on that note, I will return to you very soon. And I thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Subscribe to my Substack if you want to read in-depth, harsh truth letters that is going to really, really, really present to you reality. No fluffy stuff, no funny stuff. Straight facts, truthful, empirical evidence, reality. That's where it starts for your evolution. Dante Taviantz. Take care.